Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to Living on the Edge. Great advances in science and technology have brought mankind striding to the door of the 21st century. But in the process, man has left oceans polluted, mountains crumbling, and many species at the brink of extinction. This week, we travel to the Himalayas to see what's being done to save the endangered musk deer. We also expose polluting dye units in Panipat and look at a cheap and easy way of producing electricity. Many species around the globe are rapidly becoming rare and endangered. While some are victims of continuing deforestation, others have become targets of incessant hunting and poaching. The Himalayan musk deer is one such animal whose numbers have dwindled precariously. Amitabh Shukla recently visited a farm high up in the Himalayas where musk deer are being bred in captivity. Here he presents an insight into the philosophy of conservation.
Small, shy and solitary, the musk deer roam wild and free amidst the dense forests and mist-filled valleys of the Himalayas. Today it is a rapidly disappearing species, as forests are felled, rivers polluted and roads cut into the mountains. But what makes the plight of the musk deer particularly poignant is its killing for musk, which is used in perfumes and natural medicine. Secreted by a gland in the male deer, musk costs up to $50,000 a kilo in the black market.
The Himalayan musk deer was once continuously distributed all along the southern side of the Himalayas, from 2,700 meters to the tree line. Today it is in isolated pockets in its former range, largely due to poaching and extensive habitat destruction in the Himalayas. So this is one major reason that has led to local extinctions of the species in many localities in the Himalayas.
To save the declining population of musk deer, captive breeding was begun in 1982 in Kanchulakarak in Uttar Pradesh with the objective of later reintroducing the deer into areas where it had disappeared from.
ये प्रोजेक्ट अब हमारा फाइनल स्टेज पे है। वाइल्ड लाइफ इंस्टीट्यूट की तरफ से यहाँ पे एक रिसर्च फेलो भी पोस्ट कर दिया गया है। वो फील्ड वर्क उन्होंने स्टार्ट कर दिया है और नेक्स्ट समर तक हम ये मानते हैं कि हम इस रिलीज वर्क को कर पाएंगे।
Although captive breeding can pull back species from the brink of extinction, it can create a host of problems, many of which may not have been foreseen. For instance, doesn't captive breeding induce behavioral changes in the musk deer that could actually make it less competitive in the wild?
Their feeding behavior has become more of a conditioned reflex. Here feed is provided, fresh cut fodder is provided. So they're used to this sort of expecting food in a particular place and a particular time. This is not a desired behavior if you're planning to release them into the wild.
Because much of the work of the project is experimental, Living on the Edge was not allowed to film chemical immobilization of the musk deer. In fact, the whole process was so shrouded in secrecy that our curiosity was aroused. It was only later that we discovered that the musk deer have disastrously fragile hearts, and even a sudden loud noise is known to have been fatal. What effect then would the firing of a dart gun have?
Nobody has done chemical immobilization of musk deer, and this time we are putting the efforts to first to see how we can immobilize, what kind of drug we can use on these animals, so that will be helpful when we plan to translocate these animals into the wild.
While a certain amount of experimentation is inevitable, the question whether the musk deer can make it on their own is difficult to answer. Food on demand, advanced medical facilities, and safety from predators may be suitable in a zoo, but are hardly what wild animals in their natural habitat are used to. This is something that Western governments have found to their dismay. Indeed, it can be argued that over-solicitous ministering could only accelerate destruction in the wild. And yet captive breeding has been instrumental in saving species when all else has failed. The California condors are on the road to recovery, and closer home the crocodile has multiplied to almost unmanageable proportions. But there is always the danger of too much inbreeding.
If there is inbreeding, and if the remaining animals have a deleterious gene, that can spread through the population and which can destroy the population eventually.
Although captive breeding may be a valuable first step, long-term conservation depends on saving entire ecosystems in sanctuaries and reserves. Development pressure and human interference, however, are taking a toll on such preserves, particularly in India.
At least we are able to save the species in that island. I believe in international consciousness, the flow of funds, the interest of the people in saving the species for future mankind, for ourselves, for the species themselves, I think the movement is much greater today. So therefore, if these islands have been saved, tomorrow they can be expanded. Tomorrow corridors can be created. I think there is hope.
Critics of conservation argue that human needs are paramount, and it is ridiculous, particularly in the poorer countries, to put animals first. After all, conservation does involve leaving valuable land untouched and the expenditure of enormous amounts of money.
People have to become realistic. In a country like India, we cannot afford putting in money into conservation where it doesn't pay back and where millions are starving.
Yet, despite such criticism, it is apparent that conservation has fired the imagination of millions across the globe. Whether it is efforts to save the cheetah in Africa, the koala in Australia, or the elephant in Asia, people are increasingly linking their own survival to endangered species.
The most important thing is the philosophy that we must share this planet with other species, but equally that if we do not do so, eventually the man will harm himself.
Conservation of a species is just not for a species, it's for the entire ecosystem and ultimately people's survival.
While the survival of species is merely an emotional issue to some, to conservationists it creates a host of practical problems. At what stage do you decide a species is endangered? Can all endangered species be saved? And should conservation be confined to animals that have commercial value? There are no easy answers to these questions. Would you, for instance, support conservation for cockroaches that have been around for 225 million years, or vote to save the panda?
This is a long-standing argument that the cute and cuddly species get more attention. People want to save the panda because it's cute and cuddly, and shall we say the crocodile or a creepy crawly creature gets less attention. Now this is part of human nature, as I said, but a realization is creeping in that our attention should be equally divided, and rectification is taking place. Certainly today more money is going to the cute and cuddly species, But there are a lot of scientists now. There are projects for the what are less glamorous species, shall we say.
There's a hell of a lot of work still needed to make the people understand why a particular area should be conserved, why an ecosystem should be conserved, what is the relationship of the ecosystems with the human beings, through what medium, and all that stuff. Unless the people understands, it's very, very difficult in today's context.
Ultimately, man will have to face a deeper, somewhat philosophical question. Our planet has existed for 4 billion years, surviving cataclysmic upheavals in and outside the solar system. Some of these have wiped out entire species, but new ones have always evolved in their stead. Man is only a recent addition to a planet where 1 million years is only a brief period of its history. And yet, man with all his technological advances has only perfected the art to destroy himself and scores of animal and plant species, abrogating to himself nature's role. Perhaps it's only our conceit that permits us to believe that we are the only permanent inhabitants of the earth. Our planet, however, may still have the last laugh.
If he who laughs last laughs loudest, then no one can be laughing louder than the owners of polluting dye units in Panipat, who have consistently ignored environmental safeguards in the rush for higher profits. Instead of following mandatory procedures, contaminated water is discharged directly into municipal drains, spreading dirt and disease. Worse, Pollution Control Board officials are alleged to be hand in glove with the owners. Priya Somaya reports.
This is a typical dyeing unit where large quantities of yarn and textiles are chemically treated for domestic and foreign markets. At each stage of the dyeing process, textiles and yarn are treated with huge amounts of water mixed with chemicals. When the water becomes saturated with effluents, it is periodically changed. And instead of following mandatory pollution control procedures, the effluent is discharged directly into municipal drains. Pollution control is the exception rather than the norm. Not only are municipal drains meant only for domestic waste, but it is also illegal to dump untreated industrial effluents into them. But in scant disregard of legal provisions, this factory pours out thousands of liters of untreated chemical waste every day. What makes this worse is the fact that the same procedure is followed by virtually all the factories in Panipat.
There was a time when the units are said to have dumped their effluents quite recklessly and unscrupulously into the ground by digging wells, which was really threatening the groundwater also. But as per my information, most of the units have now been persuaded not to do that, but now they are discharging their effluent either into the drains or onto the road.
ये फैक्ट्री कम से कम दिन में 8-10 बार पानी छोड़ती है। जो ये सोत रंगाई करते हैं उसका ये डाई वाला पानी इधर सारा आ जाता है, क्योंकि ये एरिया नीचे इसलिए यहीं जमा हो जाता है। आगे जाने का इसका कोई गुंजाइश नहीं है पानी की।
But there is much more to the pollution in Panipat than just drains choked with industrial effluents. Because effluent dumping is continuing in callous disregard of existing provisions, coupled with the lack of efficient drainage, groundwater contamination is an obvious consequence. Besides, the chemicals cannot be broken down by soil organisms. Instead, the soil loses its filtering capacity, leading to permanent pollution of the underground water system. In fact, earlier, to escape detection by the Pollution Board, many industrialists sank bore wells to clandestinely pump dye waste deep into the earth. This had only made groundwater contamination disastrously efficient. Though pollution control officials claim this has been stopped, damage to underground water reservoirs may be more permanent than anticipated. And because Panipat is solely dependent on groundwater rather than a canal system, the consequences can be disastrous. Already, a population of over 200,000 is being increasingly affected by groundwater pollution.
हमारे घर में एक हैंडपम्प है, उसका भी पानी ऐसा ही है। अगर आप एक बर्तन में पानी 1 घंटा पड़ा रहने दो, 1 घंटे के बाद बर्तन भी पीला और पानी भी पीला पड़ जाता है, तो मजबूरन वो पीना पड़ता है, क्या करें, और कोई यहाँ कोई साधन है नहीं।
When this water is consumed by the people, it will contain the compound released from the dye, which are aldehydes, ketones, heavy metals, aniline, sometimes variety of other chemicals. Now, the effect of this on the persons who ingest this water will be multifarious. Some of them may be neuropoisons, some are carcinogens, some may affect the functioning of the liver and kidney. So, eventually, the people who consume this water will have a series of health problems, sometimes very serious ones.
Most people, however, had little option but to drink the water, unaware perhaps of the long-term consequences. And yet, all factories that Living on the Edge visited were either blatantly flouting pollution control norms or had effluent treatment plants that were not working.
ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट लगाया हुआ है, जिसको कि हम पानी को जैसे कि हमारे को पोल्यूशन डिपार्टमेंट ने बताया हुआ है, उस तरह ट्रीट करके हम बाहर निकालते हैं पानी को।
पर अभी हम देख रहे हैं कि आपके फैक्ट्री के बाहर ही यहाँ पे नाला लगा है और नाले में हरा पानी, नीला पानी ऐसे निकल रहा है।
ये तो खैर आज क्योंकि हमारी मशीनें बंद हैं।
ये आपका नाम और फैक्ट्री का नाम ज़रा बताइए।
I'm not going to tell you, ma'am. मैंने पहले आपको बताया था क्या बात कर रहे हैं।
आप ये बताइए क्यों नहीं बात कर रहे हैं?
Listen now. Let's go. आइए मैम, पहले बात करिए, बैठ के बात करिए।
यहाँ पे we don't have light here. We'll have to come outside, please.
अब stop करो उसको भैया, master बंद कर।
Answers such as these only seem to confirm our suspicion that pollution control in Panipat is virtually non-existent. To test our hypothesis, we prevailed upon the officials of the Pollution Control Board to accompany the camera team on a surprise inspection. To our astonishment, not only did the officials hardly seem to know what they were doing, but they actually took to making excuses for factory owners, raising serious doubts about their impartiality.
That means this is a very good water. I mean,
this is not very good water, but pollution chemicals are there. It is polluted water, not as a. क्या बनाते हो? What
I want to ask, I would like you to ask, is that where exactly the ETP plant is, and I like you to check the ETP.
Actually, madam,
we have to see the process first. How much effluent is discharged by a particular unit?
They are discharging into the municipal committee drain after treatment.
But the point is your duty. You've just seen that the water is actually going straight into the drain, and here you're doing a cover-up job saying ये ETP plant को जा रहा है.
No. You see. I have already told you the main drain is connected with this, and this is going to the treatment plant. This is our treatment plant.
Okay, we'd like to see the running of the treatment plant in that case.
Actually, because of the rain, the motor has got defect. Even there, I will try to see.
So is your ETP plant running right now?
I will just see.
What followed was a burst of activity to get the treatment plant running. But the belated efforts fooled no one. The seemingly lax approach of the Pollution Control Board, coupled with the casual confidence of the factory owners, convinced us that effluent treatment hardly ever takes place. Some industrialists, however, were more forthright. They alleged that the Pollution Control Board was hand in glove with the polluting units.
अपने पानी को fully treat करने के लिए तैयार हैं, चाहे उसके लिए हमारा 15,000 रुपये पर मंथ का खर्चा क्यों ना हो।
लेकिन अभी ये फैक्ट्री की
सभी फैक्ट्रियां हो तो
नहीं, आप क्यों नहीं कर लेते?
हम इसलिए नहीं करते, हम देख रहे हैं कि बाकी फैक्ट्रियां रिश्वत दे करके बिना ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट लगाए अपनी फैक्ट्री चला रही हैं।
What they are saying is that it's very easy कि कुछ पैसे दे दो और हमारा सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाएगा और this SPCB will just ignore us.
No comments.
We went around the city and बहुत सारे यूनिट्स देखे, वहाँ पे blatantly बाहर ड्रेन में डाल रहे हैं या सेसपूल्स में डाल रहे हैं.
Actually, there are a lot of cottage industries in Panipat, and it is very difficult. साभी बताएंगे इसके बारे में. Cut please. Let us think what we have to answer.
I mean, what is the problem? Why is it the fact that in 2 years, 3 years, not one unit, this I know for a fact that not one unit has actually been shut down?
नहीं, हम ऐसा है, हम उनके अगेंस्ट एक्शन तो मैडम ले रहे हैं, ऐसी बात नहीं हम एक्शन नहीं ले रहे,
क्या एक्शन ले रहे हैं अभी तक तो दे स्टिल फॉर अ फैक्ट वी सीन ड्रेन्स में जो डाल रहे हैं
कोर्ट उनको हम इलेक्ट्रिकल कनेक्शन के ऑर्डर करवाते हैं, कोर्ट उनको स्टे दे देती है। डाइंग यूनिट में थोड़ा सा हमें ये प्रॉब्लम है, जो डाइंग्स होती हैं, डाई जो धागा है, धागा तो डाइंग को चूस लेता है, तो उसमें कलर्स तो कलर ही होते हैं ज़्यादा, उसमें कुछ ऐसा होता भी नहीं।
Recently, there has been, the DC told us that a survey has been conducted, a water sample survey. Now, what is the
We have also taken recently, last week we have also taken samples of all tubes and hand pumps in the city.
So, what does that report say?
हाँ जी, रिपोर्ट्स तो ठीक ही नहीं थी, क्योंकि उन्होंने ट्यूबवेल्स के और हैंड पंप्स के सैंपल्स लिए हैं। वाटर वाज नॉट फॉर ड्रिंकिंग पर्पस।
Panipat, there is an unplanned growth of industry.
No, I'm asking you a specific. No, I'm asking you a specific question. You just mentioned that you conduct surveys every day.
Every day, yeah, every day. And suppose we come across some new industry.
Okay, yesterday, which are the industries that you went to?
Yesterday, I was on leave for half day, and I think we visited around 10-15 industries.
Okay, now where are the water samples?
We had not gone there to collect the water samples, because for water samples it was raining yesterday. How could we collect the water samples? There was no dyeing yesterday.
नहीं, ये जो पोल्यूशन की वजह से इतना सबको तकलीफ हो रहा है पानीपत में, तो आप क्या सोचते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट क्या करना चाहिए या एसपीसीबी क्या करना चाहिए?
ये करना चाहिए कि सभी फैक्ट्रीज के लिए कॉमन एक ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट लगाए और पर फैक्ट्री उसकी टर्नओवर जो भी चार्जेस लेना चाहिए चार्ज करे।
Until then, the prestigious eco-town status recently awarded to Panipat will only be an empty title. Filth and disease will increase, and environmental protection will only be ignored in the rush for ever-increasing profits.
It's cheap, clean, and available in plenty. In fact, it can never run out, and India can use it to generate over 20,000 megawatts of electricity. Gauri Meni assesses the suitability of an environment-friendly source of energy that has just captured the imagination of our planners.
A frenzied search for new sources, depleting reserves that can't last beyond 16 years, and an escalating oil import bill seriously question the long-term viability of oil as a source of fuel. Added to this is an all-pervading power shortage, which is only worsening.
For those who like figures, consider this. India needs an additional 6,500 megawatts every year to stabilize the situation. In simple terms, that is equal to 6 new Bhakra dams every year for the next 15 years.
But it's much more than mere arithmetic. Conventional fossil fuel extraction has an awesome impact on the earth, destroying large areas of cultivable land. Besides, conventional fuel is exhaustible and is bound to disappear over a period of time. Ultimately, we have to look elsewhere to find cheap, renewable, and environment-friendly sources of energy. And we may not have to search as far and wide as we think. What you just heard and saw is a viable source of energy, if properly harnessed. No toxic fumes, no health hazards, and no power cuts to hinder production. Wind energy may hold part of the answer to the looming energy crisis, as it has in the Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany.
Wind energy in particular is attractive because it is environmentally friendly. It is clean. It doesn't create any local disturbance. And the source of power is endless, perennial.
The only catch is that you need an area with a potential for wind velocity up to 8 meters a second, and a fairly large piece of land. Proximity to a substation can be an added benefit. And as far as costs are concerned, a 1 megawatt farm requires an investment of 4 crore rupees. If that feels too steep, there's a silver lining. The New Delhi-based Renewable Energy Development Agency offers soft loans from 70 to 80% of the cost at 15% interest. Repayment can take place over 10 years with 100% tax depreciation in the first year. Besides, power generation projects have a 5-year tax holiday, and there are several other concessions.
The total investment an investor can get back within a period of 6 years. After 6 years, it amounts to that whatever he is generating is at no cost. We can say the cost of generation is nil. It is relatively maintenance free. As in the military parlance we say fire and forget missiles, we can say install and forget.
Not surprisingly, over a dozen industrial houses are showing interest in wind power projects. Tamil Nadu already generates over 65 megawatts of wind power, and Gujarat is capitalizing on it in a big way. Wind energy has become even more attractive once it was realized that it can be transported through a grid.
The power which is being generated over here, that is pumped under Gujarat Electricity Board, and the same power we can utilize at our consumption place, which is near Ahmedabad.
This means that you can generate power at one location and have access to megawatts in your factory at another location. And there are provisions to sell excess power back to the electricity board. With each 1 megawatt wind farm generating up to 300 kilowatts or 20 lakh units a year, it does seem worth the initial investment.
Certainly, because after initial installation cost, there is no other expenditures which consumes fuel or coal and which adds to the power cost.
As the wheels of change force us to question and rethink existing energy requirements, wind power might just emerge as an exciting alternative, making another milestone on the road to sustainable development.
The sun produces more energy every minute than all the energy used on Earth in a whole year.